All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on the Lumion webinar, Selling the Design. Um, with us today is myself, Dan Coogan, Michelle Boulot from our sister company, AtlanticCAD, which is now part of SolidCAD, and our tech expert, Patrick Semek, as well. Michelle, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Excellent, excellent. So we're going to get started here. So what we're going to do a quick high overview of SolidCAD if you've never heard of us before. Actually, let me just make sure that Patrick's here. Patrick, say hello.
Hello, everyone.
Good. We'll do a quick overview of SolidCAD, and then we'll jump into the Lumion portion of this webinar. We should wrap up within, give or take, about a half an hour, and we'll leave some time for you guys to ask some questions. We'll keep this pretty high level, so if you guys do have any questions that are a little bit more technical, we'll take them offline. We'll make sure to follow up with each one of you after the presentation. So let's get started here. So again, if you don't know who we are SolidCAD. We're the biggest Autodesk Platinum partner here in Canada, and we do have the biggest application specialists across the country. So we do have a lot of expertise in the field of AEC, ranging from your typical architecture engineering to civil to as well the construction field. We do provide full training capabilities on all our solutions, so everything from Autodesk to Bluebeam to Lumion, V-Ray. We have experts in every product line that we support. The additional services that we offer, a growing number of our clients are now engaging us on the programming and automation side, whether it be from simple Lisp routines to APIs within AutoCAD or Revit, or getting into Dynamo scripting. We also help a lot of clients in the data management and collaboration side, in the manufacturing and the AEC side. And we do a lot of now workflow assessments, really refiguring, re-engineering their workflows to ensure that they optimize their software and efficiency. Of course, with all our software, we pride ourselves on full technical support. We want to make sure that the software and the solutions that you buy from us, we are able to back up, and we do offer full support as part of our offering to our clients. As I mentioned before, a lot of our clients are engaging us on that tech workflow assessment. We'll basically walk in and help them solve some of their business issues, understand where their bottlenecks are, and how we can implement technology to ensure that they can get the business objectives out the door. Some of the partners that we are partnered with, some of the partners that are with us here, again, is Autodesk Chaos with V-Ray, and today we're going to be working with Lumion on their solution. Some additional softwares or hardware that you guys might be using, again, it might be Bluebeam, GlobalScape, Zero, or 3D Connection mice. We're also associated with the different CanBIM affiliates throughout Canada, chapters, and also locally here in the Toronto BIM community with the Smart Building Alliance. And finally, some of our clients that we work with. Some of you guys are maybe on this webinar, but if not, these ones are a little bit more local to Ontario, which we're presenting from today. One of our best case studies, again, is IBI Group, which we've done a lot of services and support with their software. We are very proud of supporting them throughout their life cycle with Autodesk software and services. As mentioned, we're also a cancel company, so we do offer full support on some of the hardware that you might be using. We do have a business unit that's specializing on plotters and printers and media, as well as some of the surveying equipment. So we do offer scan to BIM services and some of the equipment that you might want to rent for some of your jobs. And an example of a scan to BIM service that we offer, helping you guys take as-built conditions and making that into a BIM ready model. And here's one case study that Patrick himself had worked on, the Royal Yacht Club, which we'll kind of present in a little bit later on this Lumion. We'll actually show you the Revit model itself and how we kind of use it in Lumion. And again, there's right now the offerings from Autodesk on the BIM 360, if you're not familiar with them. A lot of different modules available. And if you have any questions about them, please reach out to us. They are very, very good offerings right now and promos available if you are interested. some of the success stories we have available, you can go to our website, and under About Us, you'll find different stories and case studies that might relate to your field. And again, if you have any questions, you can reach out to myself, and I'll put the information on Michelle and Patrick and myself at the end of this presentation as well. Good. So let's move on here. Right here, we're going to go up. And let's get started with the webinar today. And again, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, just post them in the webinar module there. There's a little section for questions. Either Michelle, Patrick, or myself will answer them throughout the presentation. So today we're going to be looking at Lumion and kind of how it integrates with either Revit, Revit LT, or with SketchUp. We'll show some examples of how we can use it. We'll show some of the features built into it. We're not going to get too knee deep into it because Lumion, really, you have to see it live. You have to really understand it. So going on this webinar today, it's not going to do justice because you're going to see this a bit of a leggish movement in the environment. So normally you would see it kind of moving in this 24 to 30 frames per second smoothness. Today you're going to see some sluggishness because we are presenting over GoToWebinar. So let me get into a little bit of an overview of what is Lumion. Some of you have seen it, have heard about it, have maybe tried it. Some of you might even be considering it for your practice. So let me give you a quick overview, a few minutes of what it is. So again, Lumion is a game engine solution that pretty much any architect or designer can take advantage of and create really rich visualizations in both still as well as in video, motion, and interactive walkthroughs. And when I say simple, it's very, very simple to use. Michelle, how simple?
Yes, I can speak to that. Basically, you got 4 buttons you got to learn.
Pretty much. So if you ever played a game, like a first-person shooter game on an Xbox or on your PC, it is that simple. It's that same environment, but it's so focused for the AEC market that anyone can use. Do you have to be an expert? Absolutely not. I'm not an expert. Patrick's not an expert in the field of visualization. There are studios that focus strictly on visualization. They do some really beautiful renderings using tools like V-Ray, 3ds, Octane, a lot of different plugins. But you really got to be an expert, and those stills are very accurate and kind of really show off the realism. Lumion kind of gives you a little bit closer to that, but not to that sense of realism. But it gives you enough compelling evidence to show to your client to really get them to understand the design intent. So again, it's utilizing a game engine. There's a lot of different filters available within it that you can work with. And again, a lot of our clients who are using it will still do some post-processing with it in Photoshop just to kind of give it a little bit extra edge on their renderings. The question I've always been asked, oh, sorry, we have a quick question here. What is the best VR gear for Lumion? Pretty much you can use, I'll talk about this a little bit at the end, but you can use your typical Oculus from HTC. I tried it with the Samsung equipment as well. They all work really similar. The quality was all pretty much the same. But we'll talk about that as well, and we'll show you some good practice of how to use the VR with Lumion. Some of the questions we've been asked in the past: do you need a big network of CPUs for the fast rendering? Nope. Lumion is not distributed rendering, so it means that we're not using 100 computers to render quickly. We're using one computer with a decent video card. Okay, and a decent video card, usually 2 gigabytes, game engine type, or Quadro, which is a CAD workstation. On this laptop that we're presenting from is a Lenovo P51, and you got what, Patrick, 4 gigabytes of memory on board. Okay. Let me just go on here. So let's look at what makes Lumion different. Michelle, do you want to chime in on this one here?
Certainly, one of my favorite topics. One of the best thing about Lumion, as we've talked about, is really it is the ease of use. When I say there's basically 4 buttons to learn, I'm not joking. It starts with 4 simple buttons over the bottom left-hand corner. It identifies your environments, your materials, your objects that you can import. Over on the left side, on the right side, you will have another 4 buttons, which is basically going to be saving your files, starting new models, and so on. The interface is excessively easy to work with. The second part is the speed. Lumion is one of the only software that really, it is so fast. You are in a virtual environment such as a gaming engine, and what it renders, what you see on the screen is really, it's going to be the same quality. Obviously, the output will be a little bit better, but it's that fast. So you can move around and everything is instantly rendered on the fly. So there's nothing like, if you're doing some Revit rendering or some SketchUp rendering right now, you turn a light on and you hit the render button, and you're going to, if you're using the internal rendering engine, you're going to wait a very long time, or you're going to output it out to the cloud in the case of Revit, and you're going to be waiting at least 10 minutes to get an output back and have a look at it and say, oh, okay, well, I need to adjust my light. In Lumion, you turn the light on, the light is on, it's instant, you see exactly what that light is going to produce. There is no waiting. The third option that I really like here is the 3D content. The professional level of Lumion has over 3,000 different 3D models pre-built. We're talking about tables, chairs. As you see in this picture here, there's going to be barbecues. There's going to be all kinds of different types of trees, even the environment such as water. It actually knows what water is. If you stick your head in the water, it's going to look just like if you just stuck your head in the lake. It's going to be the same look and feel. Visualization, as Dan mentioned, that's the beauty. It is so fast and so quick and so real that showing this to your client, the quality is more than plenty. The client will actually understand the 3D model. And you're not spending a huge amount of time doing this. And of course, the integration is really, really nice. Dan's going to show how easy it is to import some SketchUp files and how to transfer your data from Revit to Lumion. It's as easy as one simple button click. I'm not joking.
Cool. Thank you, Michelle. That's awesome of describing the reasons. And again, I mean, when you're looking at Lumion, it's really about kind of getting the idea across. I mean, I have a lot of customers who are using V-Ray, and we like V-Ray. It's very good. It's very realistic, but it requires a lot of resources, a lot of knowledge. And Lumion, I think, is a perfect fit for those small, medium-sized firms who are not working on some very large condo-type projects or competition projects, or just working with some small developers, or working with a really big project for private residential. And they just need to get the point across, to show some of the eye candy. And we can show the SketchUp model, we can show the Revit model. It's okay, right? But it's very flat. So we'll show you some examples of what Lumion can do. Let's take a look at what the toolbox looks like for a lot of folks and what Lumion can handle. Again, I think most of you are already using Revit and SketchUp. And it works perfectly with those two main tools here. It also works with 3ds Max. But if you look at the different file types available, what we see is a lot of companies are working with SketchUp and Collada files that are imported into Lumion. And that's exactly what Revit does. It exports it as a Collada file, a lightweight 3D geometry file with some of the materials already assigned to it that we can override in Lumion to get the model ready for visualization. So let's look at exactly what Revit, we're going to talk about it in a moment. We're going to jump right into it. Again, when you're a full user of Revit, there is a plugin available directly to drop into your tabs at the top, which allows you to do, one, the export of a Revit file into a Collada file, basically a lightweight container to bring into Lumion. Or the other option is you could do what we call live sync. And live sync, it allows us to basically navigate the Revit model during a design phase. So if you're actually working right in there and then documenting, you need to get a quick sense of what the 3D geometry looks in a more rendered environment, we can do a live sync, and we'll show that to you momentarily. And like I said, the live sync is a great way to start working with the model and getting an idea of what's going on inside the environment. So we're going to show you exactly this live sync of the model below here. So for the Revit LT users, unfortunately, Autodesk does not support plugins for LT products. So what have other LT users done is they'll export to an FBX or a DWG file. So again, the file is a bit of an extra process of going from 2 extra steps because you do have to export to that file type. And sometimes the geometry or materials don't carry over properly, but it gets the job done. And again, there is a nice price point for LT users at only around $500 a year. So adding Lumion could be a big, competitive advantage going up against the big players who have full-time visualization experts. What about SketchUp? Well, SketchUp is perfect because Lumion will suck in an SKP file without any problems. It'll just bring it right in. And the great thing about Lumion with SketchUp is that you can just add multiple models. So if you've got, your SketchUp model of a house or interior, and then you want to add some furniture from another SketchUp warehouse, bring it in. Just start, aggregating it all together in the Lumion environment. It's a great place to just start visualizing it and materializing everything together. So let's jump into a working demo. Let's take a look at the Revit Live first. Then we'll kind of show you an export of the yacht club model that we were talking about. And then we'll do a quick import of a SketchUp model. We'll show you some of the materials and the content available within Lumion itself. And if you have any questions, please don't be afraid to ask throughout the presentation. So let me just jump out of this right now. Let me minimize this handsome guy. So I'm just going to do a split screen here. So now what we're going to do is, the first test that we're going to do is, the Revit Live. So what we have here is a typical model that comes with Revit. Now we're going to use a lightweight model just because we're on a GoToWebinar and it is a bit sluggish presenting. So we're going to first start off doing the live sync. And a live sync, again, gives you that real-time visualization of the model. So now what's happening is live sync is on and the information is getting transferred directly into Lumion. So I'm going to jump into here, and there it is. It just popped up in Lumion. So now, just going to minimize my GoToWebinar portal. Now you have full control. There we go. Now we have a full Revit model that we can navigate through. And if you don't know, I'm actually working directly with exactly the 4 keys and my mouse. The 4 keys being W, A, S, D. And those are just exactly the same keys that most people will use on their PC games. And it gives you the ability to basically do a full walkthrough of the building in a live environment. And right now, what's happening in the live sync, again, this is all live geometry. So as you're making changes in Revit, those changes will propagate back to the live sync. And you do have the ability to zoom out here and start building and materializing and trying to experiment with different finishes, but also maybe assessing how light might affect the building. So you can see here, shadows. I'm going to just take it down to a dusk and nighttime. And then we have the ability also, again, to work with different materials if we have to get into that as well. And again, we can save the scene to work with it later, but this is just a great rapid way of understanding your design in a live visualization. There we go. Any questions? Michelle, can you keep an eye on the question tab, please?
Yep, I've been answering a couple of them as we've been going along here.
Awesome, perfect. So this is right here what we call the live sync. And again, can be great. I'm just going to increase the light here. And again, you can change the lighting conditions. You can add additional lighting features in here, which we'll do a little bit later. Now, you notice here we have some Revit content as well. That actually carried over into Lumion. And again, there is some built-in content, which I'll show you in a moment. So let's close this model here. And we're going to go into an existing scene here. Right here. So I'm just going to actually open up the Yacht Club model. So I'm going to close that. We're going to turn this off. So here we have a really generic scan to BIM model that we had done. Patrick, how long did this model take you to scan this building?
3 to 4 days of scanning.
3 to 4 days of scanning. This is fully documented for exterior and interior, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, this would have taken an architect. Do you remember what they said, how long it would have taken them to do it manually?
A couple months.
Couple months. So within a couple of weeks, we are able to deliver a fully documented 3D model of a heritage building, and this was about approximately 50,000 square feet, right?
Yep.
Right. So, you know, we're just using this as an example. This is Revit, keeping it pretty generic. You know, you can go into do some obviously rendering in the cloud, but it looks pretty flat, and you still got to add some content. So if you were to put some plants, you got to find them. If you don't want to go through that trouble, you could always go to 3ds Max, but if you don't have that expertise, even better, jump into Lumion. So let's actually look at what this model looks like. So actually, here's the original model that I'm just going to actually maximize this. So here's the original model. It's all generic. And actually, this is a different building. It comes in generically, but here's the Yacht Club model that we worked on a little bit earlier. So we were just playing with this a little bit earlier. We added some lights, we added some material, some gardens, and we were actually working off a simple image here on the desktop. So here's an image that we were trying to work off. You know, we were looking for just all the basic macro details of this building because we want to replicate it in Lumion here. So and when we zoom out, so it's just a little slow because we're presenting and recording this as well. Yeah, but you can see here what we've done here. We've got the boat in the background here. We've got some lights that we added under the awning here. We've got the waters, some trees that we added as well. And again, you have so many different opportunities, different ways of playing with the content and the design. But like I said, this is great because we want to just see, how is this, if we were to put this garden here in this little closed pathway, how is it going to be affected by sunlight? And again, this is not accurate, it's just generic. Or perhaps you're a lighting consultant or a contractor and you're hired to put in some new lighting for the exterior patio here. So here's something we did here. We just added some lighting options. And so then let's take a look at how I did that. So under here, we do have the option right here to add and modify the content and materials, but let's take a look at the content library available. So there are two versions of Lumion. There's a pro version and the basic version. The pro version adds a lot of different effects, but also a much, much bigger library. So if you take a look at the nature, we have here some different available objects. And you can see here, they have a pretty robust library of different tree options, plant, grasses, cactus, if you're doing any projects down south, some random objects from rocks, clusters of tree if you want to create forest or a wooded area. If you want to create some effects with leaves, you could do that as well. So just typical maples. Look at that, it's all right here, 4 pages of it. Red maples, Japanese maples. If you want to see maybe a willow tree, which is another common tree we find here in Ontario, weeping willow. And so you can add these right into your model and modify them, randomize the shape, size of it. Let me just increase here the lighting for us. And we'll take a quick look at one tree, for example. Again, if you're not presenting like we are, this would be running a lot smoother. So we'll go into our objects and we'll select a tree. There we go.
And while you're dragging that in, I want to point out that the interface for the libraries, whether it's plants or other, you can actually do searchers in there as well. So if you're looking for a very specific type of tree, you can actually do a search and it will give you a list of all those available options for that tree.
Mm-hmm. And again, if you don't see it there, chances are you might find it in the SketchUp warehouse, which can be imported as well. So you see here you have some options to move the objects, to resize it, to change the height, rotate it as you need. So you can really create a pretty dynamic environment that's randomized and looks a lot more natural to your clients. Again, there's options for creating water effects, to adding leaves, and a lot of different things to give the realism to the project. That also depends that if you're adding all these motion effects, that you're probably going to want to create a video. Videos are very, very simple, and you can always go to the YouTube and see some of the samples that Lumion has posted. So this is just a simple, again, a Revit model going into here. Very quick, I added some lighting because, again, I'm not a lighting expert or electrical expert. You can see that they're all hovering here. You can change the brightness, the color. You can create some really cool effects with lights and Lumion. That's what I love about it. You do have the option of also working with some of the Google Maps data. So if you want to work with a city, part or like a big city block, you could do that as well. Again, the bigger the geometry, the more horsepower you're going to need. So 4 gigabytes you want to invest in a bigger video card like 6 or 8. Okay, so I'm going to go back into a blank simple, just a blank canvas here, and let's take a look at what it looks like when you're importing a simple SketchUp model. So we're going to go in here, and we're going to go into our import folder. And was this a SketchUp model here? Did you have here? All right. There we go. So what we had here is a simple SketchUp model that Patrick had downloaded earlier from the warehouse, just a random one. Simple SKP file. We didn't do any modifications to it. We saved it natively. Click Add to Library. So basically, we'll add it to your Lumion environment. And again, when you're working with the model, you're simply updating it to your scene. The scene is, like I said, the container that has all the effects and materials. So as you're updating the models, it gets rematerialized to the original, as long as you haven't changed the tags on your geometry. So while that's adding, so when I do someone had asked a question here. So when I do a live sync on a view in Revit and switch to a different view, the original view is logged as a live sync view. Yeah, so the live sync is not moving along. It's just giving you a live view of what you're working in within Revit. So you are free to navigate within the live sync on your own. So you don't have to be locked to the Revit view. So while that's loading, I'm going to jump into the presentation here and kind of give you guys some samples. So here's if you remember that garden here, here's what we did here earlier. This took literally about 25 minutes, importing the model, adding some lights, adding some random gardens, and then rendering it. And all we did here was we just went into the edit within Windows 10 pictures and just added a little bit of a vignette around the borders to give it a more natural feel. So we can take a look at some samples while that's loading. We'll come back to that in a moment. Here's a sample shot, working with fog. Again, simple, add some fire, furniture, content, lots of it available within Lumion. Here's another one we did with a SketchUp model. We used the materials and increased the bump on the bricks here, added the car, added some lighting, turned on the dusk so you can kind of see the stars above here. And here's another one, added some trees in the background. So this was just a flat, plain environment. So what I did here was I added some materials on the ground to show the asphalt, added some lighting, the car. And again, this would have, some architects might pay a few $1,000s just to get a single still. This took me about 45 minutes to produce, and I could take endless amount of shots. And again, it's such a great value to show your clients all the different angles, different materials, different time of the day without having to break the bank.
And just a quick question, Dan,
Mm-hmm.
because somebody asked about this. When you say it took you 45 minutes to produce, for example, you're not talking about 45 minutes of rendering time.
No.
Am I correct?
That's correct. I mean, really, it's just spending the time to setting up your scene here. Just adding all the content. So going back to that image again, I mean, this doesn't do justice. I'm an amateur visual expert here. I'll show you some really high-end stuff, but again, this is, if an amateur is producing this and you're wowed by it, you can only imagine what your level of experience might be able to do with Lumion. But again, the rendering for this image was probably about 6 minutes, and that was using one of our other visualization experts' computer. She has a 4 gigabyte GTX video card. So again, it all depends again on your video card. So if you have a good 2 to 4 gigabyte video memory, you'll be able to do a lot faster. So here's the SketchUp model that just imported. We apologize for the delay here. It's just the GoToWebinar is delaying the speed of the import. So it is a little choppy on our end because we're recording this webinar. So we're just going to zoom in here. We're going to walk right into the interior of the model, and you can see some of the SketchUp materials. There we go. This is great. I'm just going to increase my height here. There you go. So all this simple geometry, the content that came in, you can completely customize this. So if you don't like this material, you can override it in Lumion. Let's take a look quickly at what are some of the random things that people want to use in a house. So I'll take a look at the more generic stuff. So decorations, all the typical random stuff that you would find in a house or interior. I'm not exactly sure who this guy is right here, Gabo. The typical stuff that you find lying around to give your project life. So if you're working on a kitchen design, you want to give some of that feel that it's real and it's usable. Add some of the content from the kitchen. They have cutlery, they have food, they have different pieces. And again, you're not limited to just this library. This is just a good working library, but you can always import stuff from SketchUp as well. But if all your idea is just to sell the intent, then by all means, this is more than plenty, and it's very high quality stuff. And some of them actually give you some flexibility to change the additional color of it. So if you don't like brown, you want it more reddish, you can do that as well. So this is just an example of importing the SketchUp model and overriding it. So let's take a look at what a finished product might look like. So this was a SketchUp model, again, of an exterior. Here's another one. This is of an interior using the bokeh effect, which are built right into Lumion. We'll show that in a minute at the end. Here's another sample shot of all these random objects, including people. There are RPCs available that are animated. You can move them, resize them, have them sit in chairs. Another one right here. And I've seen this kind of really on par with some other architectural and engineering firms who are using 3ds Max, and they were blown away by the ability of Lumion. And again, let's go back into Lumion to show you what some of the post effects are. So when we do go into creating a movie or a photo, you have different options for setting up the different sizes, but you also have the effects library. So build with effects. Oh, let me just go back to that. And here are the effects. So we have here for typical sun, if you like the God rays, if you want some weather, snow is a great one. So to actually show like winter effects. Rain, if you want to show creating an actual text on your projects, if you want to create 2-point perspective, which I always recommend in creating your visualizations. If you want the styrofoam effect, again, a bleached effect. And again, you could use multiple filters on top of filters. So you're not limited to just one. You can select 3 or 4 of these at the same time. And again, some of our customers are actually using some post processing on the color or for setting up the presentation materials in Photoshop or InDesign. All right. And then finally, some of the questions someone was asking about, what can you do for VR? Well, actually, we did this test here in our company. You can actually export a VR of the Lumion model into a typical cardboard, or you can use a HTC or Oculus or any of the other VR headsets, and it worked great. I like the Iris VR. It was simple enough that I can just export the images, and Iris VR gives you a trial to basically set up your cardboard headset. So you would go to the on your phone, open it, and then slide it into your cardboard and be able to see the 3D model. You also have the ability to do what they call walkthrough with My Lumion. So basically, you can set up 7 different points in the model and have people be able to click on it and see a full 360 degree view of that area of the model. So this is all part of the purchase of Lumion. So I just exit here. So here are the options here. If we go to My Lumion, Panorama, connecting, and then you can start creating specific points in the model for someone to basically look around 360 degrees and share that in the browser. And they don't need any special hardware or any special device. They just need a browser or phone to be able to see that 360 degree walkthrough. So that pretty much concludes our webinar exactly on time. I'm going to leave the floor open for some questions if you guys have any. Let me just take a quick look over. So we do have some questions here. How big do the Lumion files end up? Yeah, good question. So let me show you right here. So here's the Royal Yacht Club Island Clubhouse that we did here. That file is 35 megs. So again, they're all relative to the size of the project, but a 50,000 square foot exterior and interior modeled Revit model end up being to the same size as it. So it can be close to the same size as the Revit size. Yep, that's correct. It all depends again how big the block of the city block that you're working with. If it's just the single building, the file will stay relatively small. If you're working with a big master plan with a lot of content, the file is obviously going to get bigger and bigger.
There is, I want to,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to add to that one. There is a benefit, is instead of loading your Revit file with a bunch of objects that you will not be using in your final design, what you're going to do instead is keep all the furnitures and the plants. You load that into Lumion instead. So your Revit file stays simple and clean and fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. This model here that you're seeing here did not have any of the plants or anything. We kept that lightweight, so we have no performance issues on the laptop. And Lumion is really that closed-end environment to allow you to just work with all the random stuff to give the model, the project, life. So it's not your responsibility to document where some books might be. Where the file is stored, they are actually stored right on your hard drive. So nothing is stored in the cloud. It's all working off your hard drive. The only thing that runs in the cloud would be the Lumion walkthroughs, because that is using a browser to access. How well do images print at large size? Really good question. So this one here, they did really well. This image right here is a 760/80 by 430/20. You can go even bigger.
You can go as big as getting something ready for a billboard. That's not a problem.
So poster right here, which I did right here. So this one, that's close enough, and here I'll maximize it if you would like to see. Here we go. And if I'll zoom in here, you can see that there's not too much loss of quality. It's not too pixelated. It's perfect. And again, this is just a really quick rendering that I did. Any idea when the next trade show is? Our next trade show that we're doing, I believe, is CanBIM, coming up in September or October. And then we do have the Revit Pub Night that's coming up in mid-September in Atlanta, Canada. Oh, Michelle, are you doing any trade shows in the Maritimes?
Let's see, what are we right now? August. You know what? I think the next trade show is probably the architectural trade show for New Brunswick, which is probably going to be May 2018.
Oh, okay. Otherwise, Michelle will visit you.
Yeah, we may be going to the CanBIM. I'm not sure if I'll be there or if it'll be Dan. We're not sure exactly who's going yet to Toronto one.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So anyway, if you guys have any questions about anything that we presented, we'll leave our contact information here on screen. We will follow up with you with an email that will provide you some information on Lumion. If you do have an interest in doing a trial setup or interested in purchasing, the contact information will be available in the email. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, and have yourself a great day. Thank you, Michelle.
Not a problem. My pleasure.